It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, what's going on?
The weather is following me around the country. I don't appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Baltimore. It was nasty in Baltimore. I'm in Pittsburgh. It's nasty in Pittsburgh. I'm going to Buffalo. It's going to be nasty in Buffalo. What's going on?
What would you give it? 3-star grade for the weather in Baltimore. I think ever since then, it's just now it's really getting to you. Like it's just going to follow you forever.
This on myself. I suppose I only have myself to blame. So
no bus ticket though.
No bus ticket. No. I don't think that would be I don't want to know what would happen if Mother Nature left. I'm not willing to really entertain that thought. Steelers dealing with the elements too. They're moving to practice to Acrisure Stadium tomorrow. Because they're the 7th seed, they can't possibly play another home game. So find some new grass to tear up. Basically, this weather is as bad for the grass as it is for my mood. And so we're going to ride a bus over there tomorrow for practice. And also, maybe this is the paranoid reporter in me, but a lot fewer prying eyes over there inside Acrisure Stadium than there are on the south side where, you're kind of open, to the world in some ways. So if you want to do some secret stuff for a playoff game, it's a little easier to do it inside the giant locked stadium. So I don't know, maybe that's just me, but that's a thought. The grass certainly is a real concern. It's been pretty torn up over there on the south side lately.
Well, and has this been something that they've done in the past, like as we get to playoff time, for that reason? Like if you're a low enough seed where you're not going to have another home game or the chance of you having a home game, obviously in this case they can't, but like even cases where they
went over there once in 2021, very similar. Okay. Same. I think it might have been the same day. Also, like they'll probably practice indoors at some point if the weather. Although the weather is supposed to be nicer tomorrow and Thursday, but like if they're going to practice indoors, they won't ever really have like a padded practice inside. So if they want to practice in pads, they almost always do that on Wednesdays. So my guess is that's what we're doing. We're going to get a padded practice, and it's going to be over at Acrisure, and we'll see how things go.
Tomlin spoke today, Alan, and we knew this yesterday. We figured we were going to have something to talk about based off what he said there, but honestly didn't give us a whole lot. One thing we did definitively learn was that Mason Rudolph was going to start this football game. That's where I want to start. And the reason being, one, I am super confused by the comments of yesterday's show. Because you would think that we were just totally ripping apart Mason Rudolph and saying that Kenny Pickett should be. Both of us said that Mason should be the starter for this game. Like, what in the world happened?
I thought it was pretty complimentary of the way that Mason played. I thought I broke it down why he's been more successful than the other two guys. Like, right? Didn't I?
Completely lost in translation, I think. But you know what's interesting? What's interesting about this, Alan, is you brought up to me, and I missed Mike Tomlin's press conference until about the halfway-ish point or so, but he was asked 3 questions about Mason Rudolph, and in his answers, I would say relatively similar to you. You're kind of just like saying what you're seeing out there. He wasn't like over the top, like talkative about.
I feel like I was more complimentary of Mason Rudolph than Tomlin has been. Okay, it's been it is strange that like he's Mike DeFabo, the Athletic, who sits next to me in the Tomlin press room, and we were kind of like, okay, we got to get a Rudolph question he's actually going to answer, and he asked one, and he kind of got no answer, and then I came right back to it with a different one, and he even said like his answer to Mike was like, oh, he's confident in his decision making. I'm like, yeah. It doesn't matter how confident in your decision making. If you aren't doing a good job of throwing the ball, you don't go 18 of 20 in a monsoon. And then Tomlin said, well, he's making good decisions. Like, I don't know. It seems like the praise has been very muted from the head coach to me. It's interesting. I don't know what to make of it.
Okay, so like thinking back to yesterday's episode, maybe the one part that we were talking about was the pressure, right? But like more about the offensive line than anything else. Like I thought that
he handled the 2-minute drive very well, and I don't think he dealt with the pressure on that 2-minute drive very well. But that was one drive. I mean, he was pretty good the whole rest of the game, especially considering the conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, and see, that's what I was gonna bring up was if like I was really like nitpicking this performance from him, we finally started to see the one thing that I was really concerned about behind this offensive line's pass protection was his lack of mobility to be able to move out of the pocket. But like other than that, like yeah, he's been the best quarterback that they've had of the three.
And that's not really a criticism of Mason Rudolph as much as this is acknowledgement that the Steelers aren't very good at protecting the passer. And you kind of need one back there that can kind of run away sometimes. Like that's not his fault, though. Like
we're talking about a physical limitation. It's not like it took us by surprise. The fact that that was the case. Yeah.
And also, like Dan Moore, PFF, we wrote to the site, worst pass protecting tackle in football this year. I don't necessarily agree with PFF's methodology most of the time, but I mean, worst is probably not the correct answer because the worst is some guy who's so bad that his team only played him like 4 snaps because that's all they, it's like people say Nickelback is the worst band. They're not the worst band. You never heard of the worst band. They're just the worst band that everyone has heard of. Dan Moore is the worst tackle that start every game. Are you a big Nickelback fan? Did I offend you? I don't
know. Alan, I was just saying, do you know what I say to people that have that opinion? Give me 1 sec.
Just a dreadful, awful song. I mean, it's truly terrible. But yeah, Nickelback's not the worst band. The worst band is some band that's playing in like a dive bar in Kenosha on Tuesday nights that no one knows. Well, Dan Moore is the worst tackle that played almost every snap for his team this game in pass protection. He's been better in run blocking. I'd probably agree with that. And they're not gonna protect him. I think we know that. Like, it's not like, oh, you can just cross your fingers and hope they get better at this point. Like 19 weeks into this, you kind of are who you are. We got a pretty good idea the Steelers aren't going to do a very good job protecting Mason Rudolph, especially when I talk about this game. Boy, can the Buffalo Bills get after the passer. I mean, they are benching Von Miller because they have so many good pass rushers that they're like, we don't even need that guy. And I think that probably tells you what you should need to know, that this Buffalo pass rush is for real. And I think the Steelers' offensive line's ability to deal with it is going to be a big part of what we talk about in this game. But yeah, I mean, back to Rudolph, certainly played well enough to keep playing. I'm not sure he's really like done anything that is blowing my mind, but I he's got to keep playing. Like that wasn't even a real choice.
Right, exactly. But I just thought it was super interesting, the comments that we got yesterday, and then to hear you say you didn't feel like Tomlin's been overly complimentary of him. I just thought that it kind of coincided.
It's a little strange to me. That's definitely true.
But
there's also like a dust up about him not being the first quarterback on the depth chart. That was a question that was asked of Tomlin today. Tomlin kind of like fired back, like, would it make you feel better if he was? I doubt that Tomlin was even aware of which quarterback was in which place on the depth chart. It's not a thing that he spends a lot of time with. It's basically just a reflection of whatever. I don't know. It's fairly meaningless to me. I mean, we talked yesterday at length about the weird dichotomy of there being people inside the Steelers organization that are talking like they're committed to Kenny Pickett for the future when they're not playing him, which just doesn't make sense. They can't be. So it's not like, I don't know. I don't understand a lot of things about this that don't make a lot of sense, but maybe you can put the depth chart in that list, but I wouldn't try to read a lot into that one.
I would say that the depth chart can maybe be more of a talking point if Tomlin didn't come out and definitively say that Mason Rudolph was the starter.
Right. Yeah.
But like the fact he did kind of puts it to rest whether that's meaningful or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. If there's no update from Tomlin and then somebody moves on the depth chart or doesn't move on the depth chart, then maybe that would be meaningful. We all know Mason Rudolph's going to start. He said so. So what difference does it make what a piece of paper said?
One other thing that he touched on, we've gotten a lot of questions on, might as well bring it up. Don't know how long of a conversation we could have at it without seeing participation throughout the week or anything like that. I'm curious to hear Terrell Austin talk about this too, but like the logjam at safety, because Patrick Peterson's been playing back there, could get Minkah Fitzpatrick, expect to get Minkah Fitzpatrick back in the mix this week. Damontae Kazee coming off his suspension, able to return. Be curious to see what type of shape that he is in. But say all these bodies are able to come back. Heck, let's throw. I don't know if Trenton Thompson is going to be able to get back in, but a few weeks ago he said he thought if they made the postseason, he could be back in the mix. The way that Eric Rowe has played, like there's just so many pieces there on the back end that I think it's really interesting to see how the safety room is kind of made up in the way that the snaps are divvied up. Do we see Patrick Peterson play more in the nickel? Like it's all just so intriguing to me.
Yeah, I asked about Patrick Peterson, and I was like, there's no way to ask this question that's not just going to get yes as an answer. And I got yes as an answer. But they're going to consider moving Patrick Peterson back to corner. Tomlin admitted that wasn't an option for us the last few weeks. It will be with the personnel we have now. Wouldn't commit to it. I would do it. I mean, as long as they're feeling like, and look, Damontae Kazee, not been around the team for 3 weeks, hasn't been in the building. He was actually at home in California. So they've got to see where he is conditioning wise. He's a pro. I kind of doubt that he's been, snacking on, sitting on the couch with his feet up, down in bags of chips or something. That doesn't sound like the person I know. My guess he's going to be in pretty good shape. So assuming that Kazee is in good shape and that Minkah is healthy enough to play something approaching his normal workload, yeah, moving Patrick Peterson back to corner, because do you remember what Gabe Davis did to them last year? And if we're talking about, executing, they had the game plan 2 weeks ago for dealing with multiple good wide receivers, and it was leave Joey Porter alone with DK Metcalf. That didn't go that well. Stephon Diggs is a lot better than DK Metcalf. So, I don't think you can go into this game with that same game plan saying, we'll just leave Joey on Diggs one-on-one all game. He'll take care of it, and we'll give all the help over here to, I want my best cover guys out there on Davis and Diggs, and I think that's probably Patrick Peterson and Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, the main reason that I'm just so curious about it, they've been trying for years now to be able to run this 3 safety stuff, and it just seems like somebody's always hurt. Like going back to last year, you didn't have Damontae Kazee available. You had obviously Minkah and Edmonds there, and then coming into this year, Minkah's been out of the lineup for so long. Keanu Neal with a rib injury, Damontae Kazee suspended. The pieces that have not come together to see 3 safeties a lot for this team. Do we finally get to see it in the playoffs?
Well, I mean, I think Eric Rowe has played well enough to put himself in position to be that guy, and certainly would be that guy. But I also think Shandon Sullivan has played really well as a more traditional nickel corner when they've gone with a more traditional nickel. And so I'm not sure that they maybe would feel like they need it as much. The Bills can go 2 tight end. That's really when the Steelers like to use that. They have 2 guys. Kincaid is the rookie. He's really, I think, changed the complexion of that offense, and having a second tight end that can do a lot of good things. I think maybe against 2 tight ends, you would want to go to something like that. If it's just 3 receivers, I don't know. I think Shannon Sullivan's played really well. Also, you now have the availability of playing Levi Wallace and moving Patrick Peterson into the slot. So you have kind of 3, they're back to their 3 nickel options. Obviously, Eric Rowe wasn't a part of one of them at the beginning of the year, but they're back to their 3 options for a nickel defensive back, whether that's a third safety, whether that's a traditional slot corner, or whether it's another outside corner and moving Patrick Peterson inside. Patrick Peterson could be the third safety too. If you wanted to play Levi Wallace outside, play Patrick Peterson back at center field, and move Kazee or Minkah down the box, you could do that. They have options. We'll see how things play out. But I think Patrick Peterson playing some corner feels like a move I would make, assuming those guys are healthy enough to come back and come back fully.
Yeah, plenty of options if they're able to do so. And that's what I want to ask you. And this is full speculation, just your opinion. Say these guys are all available to come back. That includes Minkah. Obviously, Damontae's is coming off a suspension, so it's not an injury. But Trenton Thompson, Minkah, say these guys are able to come back. How do you divvy up the helmets there on the back? Like, how many guys in that secondary get helmets?
I don't think Trenton Thompson gets one. I think Eric Rowe's played too well. I mean, I don't know. Especially a guy coming off an injury. I mean, we'll see how he practices, if he practices, that kind of thing. But I mean, he has that would be the guy that I think would likely be left out. And then probably Elijah Riley. I mean, those are the 2 guys that you're, kind of leave. The one question mark, I guess, there would be do they have enough special teamers? Rowe's been playing some teams, I think. But, Riley's a big special teamer, so maybe they would want to get Thompson in the lineup just to play special teams. I'm not sure. But, yeah, I think Like if I'm just looking for the best DBs, yeah, Rose played 12 snaps of special teams, so not a ton. And probably two of those were onside kicks. So yeah, I mean, maybe they would feel like they would need the special teams help, but just from how you want to deploy the DBs, yeah, I think I'd probably rather have Rowe than Thompson.
Yeah, Thompson just popped in mind because, again, small sample size, but we're talking about tight ends. Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, Buffalo's two pretty good ones. In the way that Thompson, in that small sample size, was kind of matching up with them. That's why he kind of popped into mind. But yet, you're going to be limited with the numbers. Like, it's a numbers game on that back end, so he might just not be, the most deserving of a helmet in this situation, as much as that stinks.
Ready, I think is the word I would use there. Most ready, right? I mean, you got a guy who hasn't been playing, not like, look, I think he's impressed enough that I think he's earned himself a roster spot for next year. I just think it's hard to play a guy who hasn't been playing. It's the same as Kenny and Mason, right? I mean, like, you got a guy who has been playing like no worse and arguably better than the guy that was in there before in Thompson. Like, you're going to go to a guy who's coming off an injury and is probably less ready. No, you're not going to do that.
Sure. Yeah. And the other thing that we want to talk about, somebody that's not going to be at TA's disposal on Sunday for this game, is TJ Watt. Obviously, that is a massive loss for this team. And the big debate, obviously, is, other than Defensive Player of the Year, is how does this team make up for the loss of TJ Watt? Obviously, you're not going to be able to replicate him one for one. We talked a little bit about, Markus Golden, Nick Herbig, how crucial it is that the Steelers have depth at that position when they haven't had it, maybe in some years past. But there's just so many layers to this conversation. Like, how do the Steelers go about making up for his absence? Is it more of what we're talking about? Maybe the players on the back end, things that they didn't have available to them in that way that they now do, maybe making up some ground there.
Sign JJ Watt.
Hey, I mean, he put out a tweet. Who's going to notice?
I would notice, but look, I mean, he said he would do it for $10 million. Now they can't pay him. How does that work? Could they pay him? Like, if you sign a guy, because players don't get game checks in the playoffs, but could they sign him and give him a signing bonus? I guess they probably could do that, right? Sign him and give him a signing bonus, and then he wouldn't earn any salary. He said he would play one game for $10 million. I think they probably need to hold him to that. Bring him in. Let's go.
There we go.
They signed David Perales back to the practice squad, not to minimize, because I think he's an interesting player and an interesting prospect, but it's very clearly not the multi-time Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt. I think that the game plan at outside linebacker is pretty easy. You got Golden, you got Herbig, you feel good about those guys. Sprinkle them in, mix them around, see who does well. Kyron Johnson as a fourth is kind of like a pure edge rusher. Like, I wouldn't want him in on a lot of rundowns. He's a really small guy for the position, but he's got NFL experience. It's not like he's some nobody from nowhere. And so they have bodies. I think they're much better equipped to deal with the loss of TJ Watt than they were a year ago. I think Golden is a smart player, a veteran player. He understands the defense really well. Herbig has explosiveness, a great motor. I really like what those guys bring to the table. They're not going to be TJ Watt. I think when you look at how you go about dealing with specifically the Buffalo Bills, the one key will be those guys will have to stay disciplined. They can't play outside of themselves. It's very important. You have to maintain rush lane integrity. You can't let them get outside of containment. Those are things that TJ does pretty well, that they're going to have to replicate with different guys. I don't really think that this is a game where you can blitz to replace TJ Watt. Josh Allen is just not a quarterback I want to blitz a lot. He's not Lamar Jackson, but I think the more he runs around and throws, the more he's going to hurt you. You don't want him extending plays. You don't want him getting outside the pocket. I think you're better off making him stand there and make reads. Not to say he can't beat you that way. I just think that's the easier way to approach things as defense. So I don't really expect that they're going to get crazy creative with the blitzes or anything like that. The run defense will be a really important part of this too. You know, if Buffalo goes too tight end and they want to run James Cook to try to get themselves in second and short, third and short, where Josh Allen can really do a bunch of different things, can they stop them from doing that without TJ? Not that TJ is, he's certainly more of a pass rusher than he's a run stopper, but he's a lot bigger guy than Golden and Herbig. They are smaller players. Herbig has shorter arms. That was one of the reasons that some people didn't think he would stick as an edge rusher. So, can they handle a double team? Can they handle a pulling guard? That'll be a big part of this equation as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. Like Markus Golden, obviously been around the block. He's a vet. I think the teams pretty much know the player that he is, but I feel like Nick Herbig's going to get tested a lot in this one, and his reps like running right at him, and he's going to have to answer the bell.
Yeah, I mean, he did pretty well. I think all the way back to that preseason game, right? Was it the Bills preseason game where he had like a big run stop, right? Came up off the edge and sniffed out a running play and got a big tackle for loss. I know he can do it. It'll be a question of consistency, how he holds up over the course of a game. I like the fact that they have two of them in there, that if one of them starts to struggle or isn't getting something, they can switch him out. They can get Nick Herbig some coaching on the sideline if he needs coached up about something, and then get him back in there. It's not like he's just stuck on the field playing the whole game because they have nobody else, like they've been at so many other positions this year, right? Like the fact that they can kind of mix and match, I think, helps them out a little bit.
Now, this could be for better or worse, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to phrase this question, but like thinking back to times where the Steelers were really thin at certain positions, like when you look at like the Browns week, Bengals week, like when we didn't have the safeties, we were talking about like, oh, for this game specifically, not sure if it's going to matter with this matchup, stuff like that. With this game specifically, this matchup against Buffalo, like obviously there's no week where it's going to be a good thing to be without TJ Watt, but like how different is it playing Buffalo without TJ Watt as opposed to some of the other teams around the league without TJ Watt?
I mean, I guess it's not any different than playing Lamar. It's not any different than playing Mahomes. Would it be easier to blitz Joe Flacco? Yeah. I don't think it, compared to the other quarterbacks they were going to play, which it was going to be Allen or Mahomes or Tua, I don't think it really makes a difference. If they had gotten themselves against a pure pocket passer that really can't move, then I think maybe you could minimize your lack of pass rush more with some exotic blitzes against a guy like that you're just not going to want to do against Josh Allen.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And again, I don't even know if I worded that perfectly, but yeah, that's what I was looking for.
What do you make of just does the loss of it seems to me like people are optimistic about this game, or at least more optimistic about this game than I feel like fans of a team that's a 10-point underdog generally are. And I really feel like there is a pall that sets in over a team when you lose your best player. That they're because like when Sidney Crosby gets hurt, the Penguins fans are just like, sky is falling, everything is awful. It doesn't feel like that's been the reaction to this. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the whole like house money type thing. Like they're like, oh, we probably shouldn't even be here anyways. We're kind of expecting to lose this game again. Like you mentioned, 10-point underdogs in this one where it's like, kind of expecting them to lose. So if they do win, hey, we didn't expect to even get this far anyway. I don't know. Maybe it's that kind of approach. Maybe it's what I mentioned in terms of they're just not used to having this type of depth behind them. They really want to see Nick Herbig and probably to a lesser, like they like Markus Golden. We like Markus Golden. We trust Markus Golden, but it's probably more of an excitement to see the unknown of Nick Herbig get some more snaps as well. I don't know. I mean, that's a good point because I definitely have felt that sentiment too from talking to people where it's like, hey, I have no clue if they even have a shot in this one, but I'm just excited that they're getting to play at least one more football game. So that's kind of what I've gotten.
I do get the sense that there is some real optimism, and I understand it, right? I mean, the Bills have this just heinous tendency to play with their food, to play down to competition, to outgain teams, but not be able to beat them. And the Steelers have shown quite a proclivity to be that team that just hangs around and wins at the end, right? I mean, they did that the whole first half of the season where they got beat up, but then they found a way to win. And so I think, like, stylistically, I think you can talk yourself into this being a kind of game where maybe the Bills are a way better team on paper. Maybe the Bills perform way better statistically, but the Steelers could end up with a chance to win it at the end. Like, I can see how you can think that, even though they're certainly not likely to win, or certainly less likely to win the game than Buffalo is.
Let me bring up one thing that just popped in my mind too. I think a lot of people feel like the Steelers have found their blueprint, like with the way that the offense has kind of gone the last few games. And you mentioned obviously the defense being opportunistic and this kind of being a matchup where, Buffalo, Josh Allen, they've certainly given other teams opportunities to take the football away. And if you do that against Pittsburgh, feeling like they're going to be advantageous with that football, especially now because the offense is capitalizing at a higher rate in the red zone than they have in the past. Like, we're talking about scoring touchdowns as opposed to field goals now at a higher rate. They're running the football so well, which you feel like you can do against this Buffalo front, even though, very good pass rushers. And I know that they got Daquan Jones back within the last few weeks as well. They're big interior run defender. But still, like, I feel like this is still a team that if they let you hang around a little bit, the Steelers maybe could capitalize off of that. So from that standpoint, like we've talked about, best and worst matchups when it was the three possibilities between Miami, Kansas City, and Buffalo was the one I wanted to least play. But at the same time, if it's the version of Buffalo that we've seen a lot pop up this year, they might actually be the best matchup for the Steelers if they're going to turn the football over.
I feel like somebody tweeted this earlier this year, and I can't get it out of my head, that, like, Josh Allen is that kid from that viral video like 10 years ago where he's running and his mom's like, "What do you have?" And he goes, "A knife." And he's that's Josh Allen, right? That's the Bills. It's like, like just
reckless abandonment, for better or worse.
Right. Yeah. For better or worse, just I think that's what I see out of them. And I think that gives you hope. I also think, man, I mean, we've seen what the Bills can do, and they've beaten really good teams. I mean, this is a good team. But I just find it interesting that the reaction to TJ Watt's injury has not been, "Oh my God, this guy is falling. The Steelers have no chance without TJ." I think that's really interesting. I think it says a lot about the way that Nick Herbig has looked in some small sample size, but I don't know. They've also just done a really good job of dealing with injury all year. Like, did they play one whole game with Cam, TJ, and Minkah healthy? One. Maybe.
Good question.
Yeah, I think one. Yeah, like, it's just been a year where the defense has dealt with so many injuries. Maybe it's just one more on the pile. And, the people become sensitized to it in a way.
Yeah, I really do feel like a big part of it is where they are. Like, if the roles were flipped here and they were the 2 seed with Buffalo coming here and we just lost TJ Watt, I feel like there wouldn't be the sense of optimism. We'd be thinking about, we're about to get upset by Buffalo. There's no way this team's going to win a Super Bowl without TJ Watt. Even if it, like, some form of TJ Watt is able to return by the AFC Championship or whatever it might be, even if we were in a position as the 2 seed where we thought that was a shot to get there, I feel like this would lower our mindset, like our ability to get there without having TJ Watt up until that point. I don't know. It's interesting.
It is very interesting. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how they line up at practice this week. I'm excited to see what happens at safety at practice this week. Well, I'll be there at Acrisure Stadium tomorrow. Nick will be somewhere on the south side, I believe. Plans are still fluid for that, but I'm psyched for this week.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how that plays out. The other thing that I wanted to bring up real quick, because we're talking about the edge rushers and we brought it up so many times on here, what about the 3 edge rusher stuff? Does it make any sense to throw Buffalo's way this week?
No, I think you might see more of that 3 inside linebacker stuff that they ran last week, though, where they had it was a 3-5 where they had it was base defense with an extra inside linebacker. If they run 2 tight ends, that's something the Steelers can do. We'll see. Zach Moss is a good athlete. I don't know how much I want, I think I'd rather have a safety on the field if to cover those guys, but it's certainly an option. Look, the conditions might be, again, really, really tough to throw the ball in. Every time I've ever been in Buffalo, it's been windy as heck, but I don't think I've ever seen it with 30-mile-an-hour winds. Like that cold, that much wind, that's going to be tough to throw the ball. And the stadium sits down below the surface, and so it doesn't really block the wind as effectively as some of the other ones, I think. So could be a game where it's tough to throw the ball. Could be a heavy package kind of day. We will see.
We will see. We will keep talking about this as we get closer and closer.
Nobody left a comment about why they hate Buffalo. So I'm
everybody loves Buffalo.
This means everybody agrees with me that Buffalo is just good people. And while they're on the other side this week, like Buffalo deserves to win a Super Bowl. I think they should. Like Buffalo fans deserve a Super Bowl. I don't think the Steelers fans don't want it to be this year, but at some point, Josh Allen seems like a good dude. Like if the Steelers lose, would you have a problem with rooting for the Bills to win it all?
I will be rooting for I was going to bring this up. I don't know how the comments are going to feel about this. But so the Super Bowl party that I attend, the food is based off who is playing in the game. So if Buffalo makes it, wings are on the menu. So
well, you gotta go beyond wings too, because Buffalo is a great food city. Have we talked about the beef on weck here? I'm way in the weeds. All right. Beef on weck is like Buffalo's sandwich. It's a very thinly sliced real roast beef, not like Arby's, like a real roast beef sliced thin on a sandwich bun that has like caraway seeds on it, and you serve it with horseradish, and it's 10 out of 10. It's better than, not to say that Buffalo's wings aren't good. They are, but they're everyone else has fairly authentically copied Buffalo's wings. You're not getting something you've never heard of before if you go to Buffalo and get the wings. You will not find beef on weck outside of Western New York. So if you're going to Buffalo, get you some of that. There's also Jenna Harner worked at the TV station in Buffalo before she worked in Pittsburgh and told me about this bar that serves steak sandwiches that are actually an entire steak on a bun. It's like a whole sirloin between bread, and they only do this very late at night, and it's like a dive bar with some guy out the back door cooking on a charcoal grill. The Buffalo food scene is off the charts, and so very similar vibe to Pittsburgh. So yeah, we need to talk more as the Super Bowl gets closer. We'll get some menu ideas here about the Buffalo theme if the Bills are in it. But let's hope for this week that they're not. Let's hope the Steelers keep playing and that we keep getting to talk about this team.
Absolutely. Alan, tell the people, other than in Buffalo this upcoming weekend, tell the people where they can find you.
Riding a bus to Acrisure Stadium tomorrow. Maybe I'll try to record this on the bus. That would be no, that's a horrible idea. Never mind. Just envisioning the rest of the media horde in the background of my video. Kabali giving me bunny ears or something. Saunders _PGH on X, PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. And like and subscribe to YouTube channel. That's it.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments as well. We want to know how you feel about anything that we talked about. If you have any argument at all to hate Buffalo, we need to hear that.
We want to hear them if you got one. Yeah.
Please tell us what we did wrong in this episode about Mason Rudolph and why we hate him and why we love Kenny Pickett and our
Pitt. They need to wear the hater hat if it continues. I'm just saying.
I'll wear if for whatever reason somehow this episode gets spun into an anti-Mason episode. I'll wear the hater hat tomorrow after I look at the comments. I'm Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers afternoon drive.